children in their normal state are quite happy. The research shows that a normal child will laugh over 300 times a day, where adults will only laugh about 15. That just tells you the normal joy that a child should be having. And so, number one, if your child is unhappy, and I don't care what age, cause for concern, because children should be happy. And does that mean that they should, never have to do something they don't want to? No. But as a general feeling, a general mood, the child should normally feel pretty positive and pretty happy. So that's the first thing. Number two is if your child is showing unusual behaviors or somatic symptoms, that's body symptoms. Mom, I got a stomach ache. Mom, I got a headache. Mom, I got a backache. The thing with children, and this is true for children, pretty much till they graduate high school, children don't really put their feelings into words very well. Children communicate their emotions not through words usually, but through behaviors. And so a child will not come up to you and say, Mom, I think I'm overscheduled. I feel like, I've got too much on my plate. They're not going to do that. Instead, they'll start acting out. They'll start fidgeting. They'll start, they'll start not having attention on things. They'll start having angry outbursts. They'll start pushing or being a little bit physical with other children, things like that. And so as parents, number one, if your child doesn't seem happy, or number two, if you're seeing stress-related behaviors or stress-related symptoms, or the somatic symptoms that I was talking about, those are significant. Don't just ignore those, Mom and Dad, because that's how your child communicates to you that something's wrong. And the worst thing we can do as parents, it comes from a good place, but it really doesn't address the underlying issues. The worst thing we can do as parents is to look at the behavioral acting out, the way that these kids are saying, I'm in pain, and to punish them for that. Because, when we're in pain, we need support. We don't need punishment. And if they're acting out inappropriately, then you have good boundaries. You say, that will not be happening. Come over here. Let's spend some time together, And if it's really inappropriate, you start, you can take some privileges or something. And if they're very young, I am not against a swat on the tush. Anytime up to the age of 4.5 or so, I think it's perfectly acceptable to administer a swat on the tush, especially if, number one, the child is getting themselves in immediate danger, like running into a street, or number two, if there's direct disrespect or rebellion, that kind of thing. And it's just a very simple way to communicate to the child, no, that's not acceptable. Bam, and we take care of it. You hug them later. You're close to them later. You tell them how much you love them. But this simply will not be tolerated. And so I'm kind of in the minority of therapists that still think a swat on the tush before age 5 is appropriate. But I'm going to stand by that because I've seen timeouts not work too many times. Here's another thing about timeouts. It's very socially isolating. It's very ostracizing. It's very rejecting. It says you're not behaving. You are expelled from the family circle, and that is a dangerous precedent for children because what that teaches them is when I'm in distress and I'm not feeling good, I should isolate myself, and that's the opposite of what needs to happen. When people are distressed, they need to reach out. They need to connect. They need to be surrounded by love. And I know in some Native American tribes and some African tribes that they have a tradition that if one of their members is acting out badly, they get the whole clan to surround that child or that person, and they support them. And what they do is they tell that person all the good things that they do and how important that person is to the whole tribe, the whole family. That is the kind of supportive intervention that we as parents need to do. And so, as far as looking at your child, if they're not happy, if they're acting out, refrain from the temptation to punish them. Instead, because all that does is deal with the presenting behaviors on the surface. What's underlying those behaviors is the important part. What's underlying those behaviors is distress and pain and confusion and hurt. And so that's why we need to support and talk to those kids, put our arms around them. And, if they're having a really tough time in homework, what's wrong with saying, Johnny, this homework is not as important as you are. You're much more important than this homework. And you know what? We're just going to bag it. And I don't really care if the teacher gives you a bad mark. I think it's more important that we spend some time together, and that's okay. And if we do that, Johnny, do you think maybe tomorrow that you could really focus on it and I'll help you with it? Yeah, Mom. Okay, let's do that. Let's spend some time together because you know what, Johnny? You are more important than that homework. And I really tell my parents that I work with, I'm like, encourage your kid to go for the B. There's something really emotionally healthy about going for a B instead of an A. For me, now, I'm not a college admissions counsel, but for me, if I see somebody with perfect straight A's, I kind of wonder. I'm like, what kind of issues do you have? Why do you have to be so perfect? What are you scared of? And I think if we can cut our children some slack and say, you got straight B's, good for you. You want to go to a community college? Awesome. Do great. You do not have to go to Harvard to be acceptable in my book. In fact, I think Harvard has some huge problems. But just so you know, 80% of the undergraduates at Harvard have a clinical depression. So why would we want to send our kid there, right? But do you see what I'm saying? If parents can cut kids some slack once in a while and say, hey, you are more important than the school. You are more important than this homework. You are more important than, whatever. And let's strengthen our relationship. And you put some emotional deposits in that kid's emotional bank account and build up your relationship. That's what you need to do, because I'm telling you that when kids aren't doing well, the last thing they need is punishment. They need encouragement. They need some support. They need to have some slack cut some slack, and then find out what's really going on in there and talk to that child, and say, so, do you have friends at school? Does it feel safe there? And, you might find, if you really talk to your child and really listen, you might find out things you had no idea that was causing the distress. And listen, you don't know, and you're just punishing their behavior, and that poor child, that's when the child later starts feeling like no one understands them. They're in so much pain. All they get is punishment and consequences, and that's when they decide life isn't worth living. But if you as a parent can keep that lifeline of love to your child and just let them know they are more important than that school, they're more important than that A, and that will give the resilience to that child to know, I'm okay. I don't have to get 100% of everything. I don't even have to get 90% of everything. If I get 80, I'm good to go. And frankly, until 6th grade, it shouldn't matter anyway. There's so many late bloomers out there. You don't want to track kids into their end game at 6th grade because so many things happen between 6th grade and 12th. Yeah, if we could just step out of the way of our teachers, our teachers, they go into the profession more as a calling than anything. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't, people who probably shouldn't be in the profession, but Marva Collins was a girl that was raised in the segregated South and didn't have very many opportunities because she was African American. But she had parents that encouraged her. She ended up going to a teacher's college, and she went to Chicago to teach, and she was so disgusted with the politics and the pressures of the schools. She just felt like it was ridiculous how they weren't addressing the educational needs of those inner city children. And so she opened up her very, very modest home, and she started a private school for these inner city black children in I can't remember, maybe 1960 or something. And she had these children. She had virtually nothing in the way of resources, certainly not multi-million-dollar Taj Mahal buildings. And the most basic type of books, and she took the most troubled inner city black children, and she was having them learn Shakespeare in 3rd grade. And she built on that, and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, I think, in 2nd grade, and then I can't remember 3rd grade, but 4th grade. But the things she created on an absolute shoestring budget. But the way she did it was she had that relationship with that child. She had that child's respect. She never let that child feel like that child was a victim. She always said, "You can do it. You've got a good brain. I'm not going to accept failure. Failure is not an option of any of my children." And she had kids that went to West Point. She had amazing kids that, she only went up, I think, to 8th grade, but they never forgot her influence because she believed in them. She had expectations of them, and it makes Common Core expectations look like nothing. But the children wanted to do it. Why? Not because of anxiety, not because of fear of failing high-stakes tests, but because of the relationship they had with her. They wanted to please her, and they wanted to just make her happy and proud of them. And that was the difference. And unfortunately, Common Core absolutely shoots the relationship all to heck. And all it will do is damage children's psyche, and it will impact their learning for the negative. I just don't think we're going to see big jumps in learning at all.